Lesson 1.3 is on properties of numbers. In this video, you will learn to recognize the properties of equality and identity, as well as recognize the commutative and associative property. Okay, vocabulary includes equivalent expressions, additive identity, multiplicative identity, multiplicative inverse, and reciprocal. Okay. So we first want to look at the properties of equality. So there's 4 of them that we're going to be looking at right now. The first is the reflexive property, which says any quantity is equal to itself. So here, for example, I have 5 equals 5, which is true. 4 plus 7 equals 4 plus 7. So whenever you have the same exact thing on both sides of an equation, that would be showing the reflexive property. Okay. The symmetric property says if one quantity equals a second quantity, then the second quantity equals the first. So for any number a and b, if a equals b, then b equals a. So if you have 8 equals 2 plus 6, then 2 plus 6 equals 8. So this is where you switch the sides of an equation, and it's the same as when it was the first way. Okay. The next is the transitive property. If one quantity equals a second quantity and the second quantity equals a third quantity, then the first quantity equals the third quantity. So if I have A, B, and C, if A equals B and B equals C, then A also has to equal C. So for example here, 6 plus 9 is equal to 3 plus 12. And if 3 plus 12 equals 15, and those two are equal, then 6 plus 9 also has to be equal to 15. So it's like saying if you have A is equal to B, and then B is equal to C, then you can cut out that middle thing. Since they're both equal to B, both A and C, they have to be the same if they're both equal to the same thing. So A is equal to C. Okay. The last one is the substitution property. A quantity may be substituted for its equal in any expression. So if A equals B, then A may be replaced with B in any expression. So for example, if I know that n is equal to 11, I can go into my equation and replace that n with 11. And that's substitution. Okay, and then we have addition properties, which are the additive identity and the additive inverse. So for any number a, the sum of a and 0 is a. So the additive identity says that if you add 0 to any number, you're going to get itself. So adding 0 doesn't change it, it leaves it as a. So 2 plus 0 is 2, and also 0 plus 2 is 2. Okay, that's the additive identity. We call 0 the identity for addition because it keeps its identity. A keeps its identity, 0 doesn't change it. Okay, the next one is the additive inverse. A number and its a number and its opposite are additive inverses of each other. So a, its opposite is negative a. And if you add them, you get the additive identity, which is 0. So a plus a negative a is the same thing as a minus a, which is 0. So 3 plus a negative 3 is 0. 4 minus 4, which is the same thing as thinking of as 4 plus a negative 4, you also get 0. Okay, now the multiplication properties. The multiplicative identity, so the identity, what can you multiply a number by that won't change the number, and that is 1. So the multiplicative identity is 1. So the multiplicative identity is a times 1 equals a, or 1 times a equals a. So any number times 1 is itself. The next one is the multiplicative property of 0. For any number a, the product of a and 0 is 0. So this one says any number times 0 is always 0. 9 times 0 is 0. 0 times 9 is 0. Okay, and the last one is the multiplicative inverse. So for every number a over b, where a and b are not equal to 0, there's exactly one number, b over a, so basically the reciprocal, switch the numerator and denominator, such that the product of a over b and b over a is 1. So if I multiply those two things together, I'm going to get 1. So a number times its multiplicative inverse is 1. So 4 over 5 times 5 over 4, you get 20 over 20, which is 1. And same if it was reversed. Okay, so we want to use these properties in order to solve this. So if we're solving this thing step by step, we want to be naming the properties as we're solving them. So we're starting out with this. And the order of operations says I want to start within my parentheses. So I'm going to first start in here. 12 minus 8 is equal to 4. So we know 12 minus 8 equals 4. So when I do this, I am using substitution because when I put in 4 in place of that, I know it's equal to it. I replace it. I substitute in 4 for that value. So I'm going to put substitution. Something like that. Okay. And then I have inside these parentheses over here, 15 divided by 5 is 3 minus 2. So this is also substitution. I also know that 15 divided by 5 is equal to 3. So I was able to replace that. Okay, continuing inside the parentheses, 3 minus 2 is 1. So I can say this is 1/4 times 4 plus 3 times 1. And again, this is substitution. Okay, so 4 times 1/4, this is 1. And what this is right here, this is the multiplicative inverse. So you have 1/4 over 4, which is the same thing as 4 over 1. So it's like multiplying by its reciprocal, you get 1. So this is multiplicative inverse. Okay, and we're going to leave this as 3 times 1 for now. 3 times 1 is 3. So what this is, when you multiply 1, that's the multiplicative identity. Because that 3 keeps its identity when being multiplied by 1. So I get 4. And then that is substitution. Okay, so you guys simplify this one. And if you can on your notes, try and name the properties. Okay, the next property that we want to look at is the commutative property, which says the order in which you add or multiply numbers does not change their sum or product. For any numbers a and b, a plus b equals b plus a times b is the same thing as b times a. So you can switch the order. And then we have the associative property, which says the way you group 2, 3, or more numbers when adding or multiplying does not change their sum or product. So for any numbers, a plus b plus c, it's the same thing as a plus b plus c, where you switch the grouping, but it's still in the same order. And the same thing with multiplication. So if I'm looking at this, it says Magina made a list of trail lengths to find the total miles she rode. Find the total miles Magina rode herself, right? So if we want to find the total miles, we're going to add these all up. So I'm going to say 4 plus 4.25 plus 6.5 plus 9 and 0, 0 plus 7.75. Now, if I want to add this, I could do it, but it might be easier to switch some things around. So I can use the commutative property, which is I can change the order of addition and say this is the same thing as 4.25 plus 7.75 plus 6.5 plus 9. So now I have this 0.25 and this 0.75, which make a whole number. So I have 7 and 4, which is 11 plus 1 more. This is going to be 12, which makes this addition a little bit easier. And then I have plus 9. I can switch these again, and plus 6.5. Now I can add the 12 and the 9 and get 21, and add 6.5, and I get 27.5. So this is something that you might do naturally in your head, but now we're just showing the math behind it and saying you're allowed to do that. Okay, you do this one. Okay, last one. Evaluate 2 times 8 times 5 times 7 using properties of numbers. Name the property used in each step. So again, what I might want to do here is rearrange this 2 times 8 times 5 times 7 so it's easier to multiply. So what I think might be easiest right here is switching the 8 and the 5. So I can say this is 2 times 5 times 8 times 7. And what this would be This is called the commutative, because I switched the order. So this is a commutative property. But then what I can do is I can multiply 2 times 5 and get 10. And 10 is an easy number to multiply any number by, because then you can just do it. So it might be easiest to do 8 times 7 first. So I might put that in parentheses, because right now I'm applying, remember, order of operations says you would do 10 times 8 first. But if I want to do 8 times 7 first, I can do that, and that would be the associative property. Okay, so 8 times 7, and then times 10. So I get 10 times 56, so I get 560. And then this would be, I guess, technically substitution. Okay, you guys do this one. And that's the end of lesson 1.3. It's a lot of properties, and they need to be studied. So make sure you go back and relook over them so that you can name them and recognize them when you see them.